This Sunday, 100 million people will sit on couches and watch 22 strangers fight over a ball. Some will paint their faces. Some will scream at people they've never met. Some will cry. Nobody on that couch wonders why a ball crossing a painted line makes their heart pound and their voice go hoarse. But 3,000 years ago, the losing team didn't lose a game. They lost their heads. In 1863, a group of Englishmen met in a London tavern and wrote down the rules of modern football. No hands, no tripping, no holding. They called it the beautiful game and congratulated themselves on civilizing a violent past. Here's the part most people miss. Those Englishmen didn't invent football. They just took the blood out of it. Because long before the Premier League, long before the World Cup, nearly every ancient civilization on Earth independently invented the same thing. 2 teams, a ball, a field, and violence. Not despite the violence, because of it. In the 2nd century BC, soldiers of the Han Dynasty gathered on a rectangular field to train, not for sport, but for war. The game was called Cuju, kickball, a leather ball stuffed with feathers, a silk net strung between 2 poles, and no hands allowed. FIFA recognizes Cuju as the earliest form of football for which we have written evidence. The Chinese military used it to teach coordinated movement under pressure. 18 kick types, professional teams, stadiums, crowds. And then, around 1368, the first Ming emperor banned it, not because it was too violent, but because soldiers were playing it instead of training for real combat. The penalty for getting caught could be having a foot cut off. Think about that. A game built to simulate war had become so compelling that soldiers preferred the simulation. Somewhere else, around the same era, a different civilization was playing a game that was not a simulation. The Maya called it Pitz. 2 teams faced each other across a stone court. The ball was solid rubber, up to 9 pounds. No hands, no feet. You used your hips, your elbows, your knees. At Chichen Itza, the great ball court still stands, nearly 500 feet long, with stone rings mounted 20 feet up the walls. And carved into the limestone is an image. A ball player kneels. His head has been removed. Streams of blood spiral up from his neck and turn into serpents and a vine heavy with flowers and fruit. Archaeologists have spent decades arguing about what it means. Some say it's mythology, the Popol Vuh, the Maya creation story, in which the hero twins descend to the underworld, play a ball game against the lords of death, are sacrificed, and rise again. Others point to a darker pattern. When one Maya city defeated another in war, the captured soldiers were sometimes forced to play the ball game first, and the losers were sacrificed. We don't know how often it happened. Some evidence even suggests being sacrificed may have been an honor. What we do know is that the ball game was never just a game. It was ritualized war. It answered the same questions combat answered. Who's stronger? Who do the gods favor? Who deserves to live? Now pause for a second, because the Maya weren't alone. In Rome, legionnaires played Harpastum. 2 teams, a small hard ball, and one objective: keep it on your side of the line by any means necessary. The physician Galen wrote a whole treatise praising it. He describes much use of the hold by the neck and many wrestling holds, and players who vigorously attempt to prevent each other from taking the space between. Another writer, Athenaeus, described the same kind of game as violent twisting and turning of the neck, and quoted a comic poet whose lines could have been shouted at any match you've ever watched. Out of bounds, too far, over his head, on the ground, pass it back. That was written 2,000 years ago. Roman soldiers carried Harpastum across the entire empire, and when Rome fell, the game didn't. In Florence, it became calcio storico, still played today, still a full-contact brawl.
In England, whole villages fought each other in mob football, hundreds per side, goals a mile apart, almost no rules. In 1314, King Edward II banned it, citing the great uproar in the city and the broken bones. It was too violent and too popular to stop. Now go to North America before European contact. The Cherokee played anetsa, stickball. 2 teams, a small leather ball, wooden rackets. Biting was legal, choking was legal, hitting a man in the head with your racket was legal. They called it the little brother of war. Before a match, players were scratched with a bone comb set in eagle feathers, methodically, deliberately, until they bled from 100 different wounds, not as punishment, as preparation. The game was going to hurt. The ritual taught you to accept the pain before it came. And the Cherokee once settled a land dispute, not with a war, but with a single game. Winner took the territory. The ball had replaced the battlefield entirely. Now here's where it gets strange. 4 civilizations, 3 continents, thousands of years apart, and the same idea, a violent team ball game, appeared in every one, with no contact between them. China had Cuju, Rome had Harpastum, the Maya had Pitz, the Cherokee had anetsa. And these aren't even all of them. The Aztecs, the Greeks, medieval France, the list goes on. If one civilization invents a violent ball game, that's a coincidence. If 4 do it independently, that's not a coincidence. That's a pattern. Something in your brain demands this. Here's what's happening inside you. When your team scores, your brain floods with dopamine, the same reward chemical released by cocaine. When they concede, your cortisol spikes, the same stress hormone that floods your body in physical danger. After a win, testosterone rises in male fans. After a loss, it drops. Your body reacts to a ball crossing a line exactly as it would to winning or losing a real fight. And the strangest part, you're not just watching. Deep in your motor cortex sit mirror neurons, and they don't know the difference between doing and seeing. When that striker breaks into a sprint, the same circuits light up in you as if your own legs were driving. When he's slammed into the turf, you flinch because some part of you just hit the ground too. You think you're a spectator. You're not. Your brain is out there playing every second of it. Now the deeper layer. For 300,000 years, your ancestors lived in small bands where survival depended entirely on the group. If your group won a conflict, you ate. If it lost, you starved, or worse. So your brain evolved to track group status obsessively. Who's winning? Who's losing? Is my side safe? That wasn't entertainment. That was survival software. The ball game solved the problem your ancestors couldn't afford to ignore. Young men needed to prove they could coordinate under threat, that they could sacrifice their bodies for the group, that they would stand instead of run. Real combat answers those questions, but it kills your own warriors every time you ask. The ball game answers them without destroying your fighting force. Your ancestors didn't invent sport for entertainment. They invented it because they couldn't afford to fight a real war every weekend. And there's a strange echo in the modern player. In the 1970s, the psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi put a name to what athletes describe in the heat of action. The mind goes quiet, self-awareness disappears, the boundary between you and the game dissolves. He called it flow. And the fans feel a version of it too. When your team scores, you don't think, you react. You're on your feet before your mind catches up, screaming, grabbing strangers. The same ancient circuitry that once sent your ancestor running towards an enemy village is what throws you off the couch when the ball hits the back of the net. The game changed, the stakes changed, but your brain never got the update.
In 1969, a World Cup qualifier between Honduras and El Salvador, 2 nations already tense over border disputes, ended with El Salvador winning 3-2. Within weeks, El Salvador invaded Honduras.
They still call it the Football War. Thousands of people died. People called it insane. A war over a football match. Who does that? But your ancestors wouldn't have asked why a ball game led to war. They would have asked why you ever thought the ball game and the war were separate things in the first place. So, the next time you're sitting on the couch, face painted, heart pounding, screaming at a screen, and someone tells you it's just a game, they're wrong. It was never just a game. It was always a substitute for blood, and some part of you, inherited from 300,000 years of ancestors who survived because they knew exactly which side they belonged to, still knows it.
If you're finding this interesting, there are more videos on this channel about what ancient humans could do that we've lost. Subscribe for more hidden human history.